that the IRS was actually knowingly deceiving them, that would be enough for them to rise up and put a stop to it.
100% of what is collected is absorbed solely by interest on the federal debt. All individual income tax revenues are gone before one nickel is spent on the services taxpayers expect from government. People have been told, that you need this income tax system to fund government, which is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, my question is, well, if that's true, how did we fund government from 1776 to 1913?
The main purpose of the income tax is not to raise revenue, but to redistribute wealth and to control society.
A lot of people might say, well, gee, if there wasn't an income tax, what would happen to education? Understand that education is paid for the most part, out of state and local taxes, your property tax. People might say, well, how are we going to build and maintain highways if there's no money coming into the government? We need our highways. There is a tax on every gallon of gasoline that people buy. Proceeds from the income tax do not pay for highway construction.
I believe that in both spirit and substance, our tax system has come to be un-American. Death and taxes may be inevitable, but unjust taxes are not.
This small booklet includes the Constitution of the United States, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence. This is a document every citizen should read. It's a document which freed an entire nation. This is the Internal Revenue Code, and this document, and the unlawful application of this document by the Internal Revenue Service has enslaved the nation that this document attempted to free.
It's gonna get a little bumpy. That's for fucking sure.
Rockefeller Foundation. I'm here today with, hi, I'm Raj, president of the Rockefeller Foundation. I'm here today with Jimmy Donaldson, better known as Mr. Beast. How's it going? And we are together, the Rockefeller Foundation and Mr. Beast, launching a great new partnership together.
Yes, we're going to try to inspire the youth all around the world, change lots of lives, lots of big projects coming up. We'll tell you more about it in the future, but I'm honored to be working with the Rockefeller Foundation, and let's change the world.
And we're excited to work with Jimmy and his awesome team. They are already helping kids in Africa and around the planet. We're going to take that to the next level together, and we couldn't be more excited.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy. Hi, I'm Raj Shah, president of the Rockefeller Foundation. I'm here today with Jimmy Donaldson.
Jimmy Donaldson. Mm.
Perfect job, Mr. Bongo. Look good. Perfect. Perfect job, Mr. Bongo. Look good. Perfect.
What's wrong? I open at 9.
Christ in Revelation 19 splits the eastern Jesus Christ in Revelation 19 splits the eastern sky, mounted on a milk-white stallion, followed by the armies which are in heaven, which are the bride of Christ, which are the Old Testament saints, which are all the holy angels. And he's descending on the earth, and he opens his mouth, and out of his mouth comes a two-edged sword. It is his spoken word. It was his spoken word that created the earth. It was his spoken word that raised Lazarus from the dead. With his spoken word, he's going to smite the enemies of Israel, and they're going to be crushed. He will take the Antichrist and the false prophet and throw them into the lake of fire. He will put his foot on the Mount of Olives. It will split in half. He will walk across the Kidron Valley up to the Temple Mount. He will sit on that throne, the throne of his father David, because he is the King of all kings. And the battle of thrones has been won by Jesus Christ, the Son of the living God. Give him praise in the house of the Lord.
Who in the world who do these Jew haters think is going to judge them in the last day? Well, you know, the Jews run the world. I know one that runs the universe. You will be judged by a Jew, whether you like that or not. It'll be a Jew that says, I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity. It'll be a Jew that says, in the last word shall judge you in the end times. It'll be a Jew that returns on a white horse with a flaming sword coming out of his mouth, and with it he should smite the nations.
The second coming, when Jesus returns to the Mount of Olives, this is where he comes and destroys the nations of the world that have come against Jerusalem. And so Jesus himself destroys them. There is a satanic spirit of anti-Semitism. Satan hates the Jewish people for many reasons, but because they prove the existence of God. Israel is the only nation that God ever created. And it proved the existence of Israel proves the existence of God. But also that's where Jesus came from. Satan's ultimate enemy came from the Jewish people, and he is a Jew. So Satan hates the Jews. He wants to destroy them. The nations of the world are coming against Israel as never before. Armageddon, Joel chapter 3, Armageddon is God's response to what's happening right now. The mistreatment of the Jewish people and the division of the land of Israel. And this peace treaty formalizes it. It formalizes a two-state solution. If these other conditions are met, which they won't be, if these other conditions are met, it's going to formalize a two-state solution. So God's angry. God is so angry at the division of the land of Israel, he's going to gather all the world together. This is like a United Nation force that comes against Israel. He's going to destroy them when he returns.
What was he called? Jesus of Judea? Oh no, Jesus of Nazareth. That's right. I don't think these people read their Bible. Maybe it's that they're reading the Torah. Maybe the Torah has a different story. The Talmud has a different story. That could be. Perhaps.
Fue convertido gracias al trabajo de sus ciudadanos. Israel es un ejemplo radical de todos estos valores que hicieron a Occidente grande, porque en su fundación era poco más que un desierto, y en tan solo casi 80 años fue convertido gracias al trabajo incansable de sus ciudadanos en un oasis de prosperidad y crecimiento. Por eso, apoyar a Israel es necesario para nuestro país, porque significa apoyar los valores que hace 100 años nos hicieron grandes, pero que abandonamos y por abandonarnos nos hundimos en la miseria. Es así que hoy más que nunca tenemos que redoblar nuestro compromiso con el bien y la verdad, tanto dentro como fuera del país. Hoy más que nunca es nuestro deber moral defender la verdad de estos valores judeocristianos, porque sin lugar a dudas, en ese compromiso férreo con el bien, sin importar las críticas, el que le muestra al mundo que hoy somos un país mejor. Y esto es también algo necesario para hacer a la Argentina grande nuevamente. Muchas gracias a todos por su atención. Que Dios lo bendiga y que la fuerza del cielo nos acompañe. I'm Israel High.
Ready? Look a little familiar? Chat, does this look a little familiar or what? People thought I faked it. Check it out. This is where it happened, bro. Tell me I'm not a big P fan. Look at that. Everyone stole my tweet. Look a little familiar. FBI is ready? Ready? Look a little familiar.
Why? There's too much stuff that needs to be done. Well, we're waiting.
We've learned something profound about what's sometimes called the plasticity of the brain.
That the brain is malleable, is able to change. We can take that up and scale that up to levels where it's actually changes in the brain circuitry, how brain regions are communicating with each other over time and as a result of environmental influences. We think of it in changes in synapses, how these neurons are actually touching each other and communicating with each other.
And we know in depression that the number and the strength of these interconnections decreases. With ketamine, we see a regrowth in the interconnectedness and number of these synapses to connect with each other.
Ketamine is a drug that, at this point, is reserved for people who haven't had an adequate response to at least 2 prior trials of antidepressant medications. We think that one of the things that ketamine does that helps to explain its antidepressant effects is help the brain to regrow the synapses, the connections between nerve cells.
So we think that we're actually targeting a different system in the brain than typical antidepressants are targeting. And that may be why ketamine works so well, even for patients who have not had success with a number of different standard antidepressants.
There's evidence that ketamine can have very rapid onset of effects in neuroplasticity. We think that this may open a critical period where now the brain is more plastic, both at the cellular level, but possibly even at the functional level, where we can start to work to change people's reference of thinking or their ability to respond and adapt to new social or environmental stimuli.
With ketamine, what we're doing is pinging the brain and triggering the brain's resilience mechanisms to promote the maintenance of healthy circuits in the brain.
The real goal is to have treatments that can maintain that
Got
response.
a clear blue sky today. The sun is shining.
We've been very interested and very active in pursuing ways of using other ancillary therapies like cognitive behavioral therapy to actually work with the patient to not only have them feel better, but to develop new ways of adapting and having new cognitive strategies of dealing with future stressors to try to prevent relapse.
Ketamine can help you with the part of depression that involves reducing the symptoms of depression, but people need psychotherapy to help make sense of what that change means for them in their lives. We think of ketamine as part of treatment, but not the entire treatment.
When patients get treated, it's really exciting because patients come in clearly struggling, clearly suffering, and you can see a change on their face. And when you think about the average amount of time that it takes for a standard antidepressant trial to work, it's 2, 4, 6, 8 weeks. For some patients, it can be an hour with ketamine.
Caracas, and it's co-located with the Consejo National Electoral, the National Electoral Commission. And there's 150 Smartmatic engineers and 150 CNE engineers side by side. They have two missions. Number one, steal elections. Number two, defeat audit. Study audit. How do different states and different localities
Do
conduct
their audits.
audit so that when they're audited, you defeat audit? An example, when people put absentee ballots on a scanner, it'll take a picture, take a picture. And then when it's about to save them, it gets ready to take a picture of almost 100 together. But what it does is they erase that picture, send in another picture, because all these machines are connected to the internet. They're all hooked up. They're not supposed to be. A new picture comes in, 100 votes or 90% for the person that they want. But when you do the audit, you're not allowed to look in the box. You have to look at the screens. They've changed the rules around the country in the different states that make it almost impossible to show that they cheated because of, and what they do also is they'll make proprietary the source code. You can't examine that. You get different types of technologies proprietary because that's where they're cheating. And they blocked those individuals very cleverly. One of the things that we learned is there's 14 different technical ways that you can steal an election. And they're operating off different parts of the machinery, but they can use number 1 and number 3, number 6 and number 7. They can use combinations, and they never use the same combinations in adjacent districts.
So that you can't find patterns.
They prepare an election a year in advance. They have the poll books. They have hundreds of people. They have statisticians. They have comms engineers, software engineers. This was the science of engineer theft and a multi-billion-dollar business globally.
And that's what you document in this book is how they have, it started in Venezuela, and yes, it spread to the United States, but they have stolen elections all over the world.
Yes, that's correct.
In fact, there's that famous video on YouTube of the Philippines parliament, right? When they excoriate a man called Haida Garcia, who's a member, an employee of Smartmatic.
Yes, that's correct.
And they know that their election has been stolen. They know Smartmatic is responsible. And I mean, that guy sits there and he gets beaten up by the parliament in the Philippines. And then they banish him, right? They kick him out of the country. And where does he go? He ends up in Tarrant County,
Fort Worth, Texas.
Right? Yes. Which
is
is
the election commissioner.
The election commissioner.
Now he moved up. Then he moved to Dallas.
Yeah.
Then of Hart Intercivic,
Yeah,
I
but
believe.
which is another. They give it another company. It's InterCivic or it's Smartmatic or it's Sequoia or it's Dominion,
Right, but he
but they
stays
all
in the
use the same
business.
software.
But
And the best part is the first election that he runs in Texas, he had a county that had been red for 67 years straight, and in one election cycle, he flipped it blue.
Well, it shows you how far they've penetrated our election system. So these engineers and they're they end up running elections in all these counties. They take over. They that's part of their contract. And so they develop expertise, and they learn how to penetrate our system. They learn how to hide the results. And they've been doing this since 2008.
Do they get help from the U.S.?
Yes,
they do get help.
Let me talk for a second about how the investigation begins. In 2020, I am with my business partner, and we do asset recovery. We were studying and doing filings against the Cartel del Solis, the largest criminal cartel in the world, a drug
Which is
trafficking,
Venezuelan.
which is the Venezuelan regime. And
It's the Cartel of the Suns,
yes,
right?
And it's called the Cartel of the Suns is because it's the Venezuelan army. They have suns on their epaulets, not stars. So the Venezuelan army is the logistical arm of the cartel, and it's led by Nicolas Maduro, the president. The president of Venezuela is the cartel leader, all right? So we're doing this investigation on the filing, and we see the election happen, and I turn to my business partner. His name is Martin Rodil. He's a Venezuelan initially. He's got a green card now, living in the United States, and he's a genius. And
this is 2020?
This is 2020, and he turns to me and says, I was involved in an investigation years ago, and Smartmatic was stealing elections in Venezuela. And I'm sure they were. He gave me some information. We said, let's look this up and start looking at these things.
Well, there were a lot of people in Venezuela who felt that, right? I
Right,
mean, there
right.
were protests and there was an uprising, a
And
backlash against it.
so-
because the Venezuelans didn't believe the election result.
So within a couple of days, we had an individual in Miami contact us. Was a university professor in Venezuela that had trained many of the people that working for Smartmatic. And he told us the story of how they were stealing elections, and he knew quite a bit. Then he introduced us to an actual employee of Smartmatic. And that individual had a family member that was involved, and he was murdered by the company. And that story was unbelievable. And then we met another, and we went through human, the two of us. Martine Rodil, my business partner, is one of the most capable people on the planet.
Very well
and
respected.
very, very brave.
Mhm.
And the regime hates him. And we went from source to source and grew the knowledge bigger and bigger and bigger. And almost for 2 years, we did this. And then finally, we thought we need help because we're getting a larger number of sources. So we sought out General Mike Flynn because he's a good friend and he's a patriot.
Great man.
And when we met General Flynn, he was to a place and we met with him and a man by the name of Patrick Byrne. And
Yes,
Patrick
I
Byrne,
know Patrick.
Patrick Byrne is the man that ultimately financed this. None of this would have been possible for us to
If he hadn't put the
recruit
money up.
a dozen of these things to pay for all. We built a computer lab. It was just unbelievable. We got images of elections that were released by courts so we could practice with them and the engineers. And so we got members from not just Smartmatic, but from Dominion, from other companies, all these people. And we literally had a computer lab outside the United States. We built it in one place and then built it in another place because when we went and tried to get help in the United States, we went to the FBI, to an FBI officer in Washington, D.C.
How'd that work out?
And when we briefed the FBI officer and they saw that, they said, Mr. Burnson, you need to flee the city. The FBI, my supervisors, if they see this, will find a way to destroy this and they will charge you with crimes of some type
Wow.
to stop you. And I didn't think that was funny. And I said, we're not fleeing. And that FBI officer said, look, you need to help us because I know what you're doing. I understand you're trying to save the country. Go to the Congress and go to the media. They'll help you. Well, we went to the media. We went to, and I'm not going to say the names, but we went to some pretty well-known journalists who didn't want any part of us. Didn't want to, we showed them what we had. And they go, that's shocking, but I'm afraid my company won't let me report this. And when we went to the Congress, they were afraid.
Should have come to me.
They
Gary.
wouldn't have helped. They wouldn't help us. One politician in America was not afraid.
Who was
Mark Wayne Mullen of Oklahoma.
Yes.
He's a real man. That
He's
guy.
a real man.
He is a hell of a guy.
Also went and rescued people in Afghanistan.
He's a hell of a guy. And when he saw it, but it took us years to get to him.
Yeah.
And all this time, we're, Patrick Byrne and all these engineers are, engineering and re-engineering and moving country and doing all of this stuff.
Well, Patrick is kind of a savant.
And Mike Flynn, though, was a real hero because Flynn believed in us, went to see the engineers. He didn't want to just believe us. Flynn wanted to talk to the engineers. He was like, these are the real engineers.
Yeah.
They built the damn system,
See,
these people.
that was the unique
They
part
built the
about their
source code.
investigation is that they had got the guys, they had recruited, built the source code, who were running the system, who were running elections, right? So they could tell them, you could go to them and say, how did you steal this election? And they, okay, we did it this way.
Listen, you know what? That's called a first-hand source.
Yes, it
First-hand
is.
source.
9 months before the election,
Mm.
we think, okay, this isn't working out with the journalists. This is not working out with the Congress. You bloody people don't want to help us.
Again, Gary, you went
know?
to the wrong journalist.
Right. So let's go to, there was one U.S. attorney in the country that we knew. And that U.S. attorney was a brave guy. He was a smart guy. I don't want to say his name because he's involved in investigations that are important right now on this. And we went to him and we did the full brief with our attorneys with us. We brought 3 of our attorneys. We sat in front of a U.S. attorney and 3 AUSAs and did the full show for 3.5 hours, showed the technology, the whole thing. And they took unbelievable notes. And they said, okay, stand pat. We're going to report all of this to the Office of Public Integrity. And probably within 3 to 4 weeks, the FBI will contact you and work with you on this. They never contacted us. They decided to pursue us and investigate us. Shame on them.
Why do you believe what you believe? Because at some point in your life, you trusted the information that somebody was giving you. And that someone you trusted told you that a car was a car, a tree was a tree, a bird was a bird, the blue stuff above you is the sky. And that's the way that we began to determine what we believe to be a fact. Most of the things that we believe to be a fact in our lives are told to us through our stories or the news that we hear. So my question would be, if they were deceiving you with the stories they tell you, would you be able to recognize that?
So we've all heard the term conspiracy theory. Personally, for me, I've never really had time to get into any of that because, frankly, I'm working all the time and I don't have the time to look into Bigfoot or aliens or flat Earth or 9/11 conspiracy or the JFK assassination. It's just, it's not anything that I really have any backstory on. But the one thing that I do have a lot of backstory on, the one thing I do know a lot about is Hollywood.
When you think about the entertainment industry, what comes to mind? Movies, TV, music, right? Let's talk about this entertainment.
I've been observing you.
What if this entertainment was more than just entertainment?
Now it's complete control!
When you're driving home from work, what are you listening to? When you come home after a long day and turn on the TV, what do you see?
The U.S. are bracing. Saying that the fund.
Think about all the content you've seen throughout your whole life. A lot of it has actually made us who we are today.
So you don't know what's really going on.
Have you ever stopped for just a second, though, and questioned the content? The only thing we consume more than content is air. But we actually think about the quality of the air we breathe. Maybe it's time to take a closer look at our content.
And fear. Taxes.
Our government's always controlled our content.
The fight for freedom.
We've just never paid attention.
Freedom of speech.
Message received.
The police occupy our community.
Work with the CIA to destabilize foreign countries.
This media that we're consuming at such a rapid rate, we need to slow down and think about what we're consuming.
Bullshit going on.
What if the people in charge didn't have our best interests in mind? Now we have to ask ourselves, who's influencing our content?
Is the CIA involved in Hollywood?
Yes.
Guys, come ahead.
I'm rolling.
That's good right there. It's picking up speed. Go, go, go.
You know, like on my way down 12, I'm not familiar with the area. I don't want to stop anywhere. I'm not familiar. Don't have an exit plan, you know what I mean? Scared.
So for the past 28 years, I've probably had one of the coolest jobs in the world. I was a professional stunt performer. I've worked with some of the biggest stars. I've got to be Batman. I've got to be James Bond. I've won World Stunt Awards. I am in this Screen Actors Guild. I'm in the DGA. I'm in the WGA. And last year I got into the Academy, the Oscars. I worked my way up from being a stuntman to being a fight coordinator, to being a stunt coordinator, to being a second-year director. First big job I get, I'm on Batman Forever. And I'm walking around set and I'm pinching myself. I'm looking over, there's Tommy Lee Jones, there's Jim Carrey, there's Val Kilmer, there's Drew Barrymore, there's Nicole Kidman. And I'm like, how did I get here? I didn't really
necessarily say I'm going to go be a stuntman. I wanted to go make movies. But being a stuntman was the easiest way for me to get into the business. I didn't want to be an actor because like pretending to be a character. Well, being a stuntman, I was that character. I was the guy behind the illusion, creating it for the guy who's on the screen. I jumped out of that helicopter. I was in that fireball. I did whatever was being asked of the job. I've had an amazing career, and I've had an amazing life. 2, 1, action!
That's a cut, that's a cut.
But in the system that exists today, as I get up the ladder, I realize it's not what people think it is. It's an illusion. It is a complete illusion. We're going to put our pick and our attorneyship. In 2014, I was working on a television show up in Portland, and I had a catastrophic injury. I've done this stuff, probably variations of it 20 times over my career. It was nothing. It was a small fall down into a stairwell. I first take fine, the second take, I knew I could do it better. I went up and I fell over the rail and I landed on the pipe down below and I burst fractured my L2 vertebrae and I was paralyzed from the waist down. When you are injured, when you are catastrophically injured, it changes who you are. I knew from that day I would never be the athlete that I once was. And I always tell people as a stuntman, the worst possible injury you can get is a lower back injury. You can break your legs, your arms, whatever. But if you injure your lower back or your hips, your pelvic region, you're done. There was 2 years that I didn't think I would ever live without pain. One of the issues I was dealing with at that time was I had lost the feeling, and I still have numbness in my thighs and on this half of my pelvic region. I was going to physical therapy, and the lady looks at me and she goes, "This isn't really helping you. You're way more advanced than this stuff." And I go, "Yeah, I do this every morning." She goes, "Well, what's the real issue?" I said, "The real issue is my pelvic region." And so she said, "Okay, well, there's a woman who works here, and she is a pelvic floor therapist."
So how I met Mike, I met him, his spine was broken and he had partial paralyzation of his pelvic floor area. We help people when they have problems with the most important functions in your life, bowel, bladder, and sexual function.
So one day we're in the middle of therapy and she stops me and she says, "Mike, I feel like you have really dark spirits over you. Can I pray for you?" And I was like, "Pray for me?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, pray for me." I don't really believe in that stuff anymore, but yeah, go ahead, pray for me. So she prays for me. And I was kind of thinking while she's doing it, okay, this is weird, but okay, whatever. So for the next 2 or 3 months, I would go, and then every now and then she would stop me and she'd say, "Hey, can I pray over you?"
I was kind of a little bit disgusted with his personality because he was all about himself and money. And I think the Lord had a lot of work to do in terms of humility with him. He made it very clear that he thought I was crazy, but he let me.
After she stopped one day, and I said, "You are either 100% batshit crazy, or you think all this is real in the spirit world." And she looked at me and she said, "Michael, I am one of the only pelvic floor therapists in Southern California at the time. And when these satanic people and these evil people do their rituals to little girls and women and boys, who do you think puts them back together? I do. It's completely real, and you need to look into it." My awakening, it didn't happen at church the way that some people find God. I just pretty much had given up my faith, and I'd given up where I was at, and I was just kind of at the point where I was like, okay, well, I'm going to have the best time I can here, and when I die, that's it. I still wasn't sure if it wasn't 100% crazy or not, but I was reading these articles and looking at these things, and I was like,
I've seen things at parties. I've seen artwork. I've seen statues. I've seen things in some people's houses that just seem to be mimicking occult stuff I'm reading about. So I was like, maybe there is something to this. I'm just going to say this. I didn't find God because I went to church. I found God because I realized that the Luciferian and the other side, the occult world, was real, and that I had been fooled for all these years, and I then got really scared. I got really scared because this was the first time in my life that I was having to question my own reality. Physically, I was crushed. I wasn't going to be who I was. And spiritually, I mean, if I'm being honest, I didn't know anything about being a Christian. I mean, really. And then professionally, everything that I knew about my career, I was starting to look at in a different way. I was starting to question my career in Hollywood from a different perspective. So I got off of social media and I made an anonymous account. I started reading blogs, looking at articles. I started reading books. I just started searching for the truth, and I was finding accounts that were searching for the truth themselves. They weren't mainstream accounts. These were accounts online that I felt like were like me. They were just looking for what the truth was. I didn't believe I was getting the truth from CNN, MSNBC, Fox. I just wanted to read it, absorb it, and digest it, and trust what my gut told me I was reading. As I did my research, I began to understand there's a very small group of people that influence all the companies that so they used to call them the Big Six. But Disney just bought Fox, and Disney controls Marvel, and Disney owns Lucas Studios. So look at that giant audience right here. Say a small group of people control the narratives and the content that we all see on all the channels. It makes you feel like, oh, I have lots of choices, but you don't. Who's telling them what to put on those channels? Where does that lead?
Tonight, the FBI is on the case, and they are warning big companies in America to protect their data after a big Hollywood studio got hit by hackers and several blockbuster movies ended up online.
This is the first time the United States has accused a foreign government of a cyber attack against an American corporation.
And this interested me because I worked over at Sony quite a bit during my career, and I actually had to get LifeLock during the Sony hack. So I was curious. I was like, what was this really about? Well, the narrative put out in the public was Seth Rogen and James Franco made a movie about North Korea. And so they were mad, and so they decided to hack Sony to teach them a lesson. That was a public narrative that went out, and that's what I was like, well, that makes sense. I know Seth and I know James, and they're definitely pushed the envelope of comedy, and their sense of humor is definitely their own. And I thought to myself, okay, that makes sense.
And now private emails are going public. It's a public relations disaster.
But what I found really interesting as I examined the WikiLeaks documents was it showed that the heads of one of our biggest movie studios in America was in direct communication with very important people in our government. It didn't surprise me. I was like, okay, well, either they're friends or there's something more to it. So I never really thought about the government influencing our content or our stories. Could they be influencing our story and our content? These were real questions that I never had asked myself. I just did the jobs. I went to work. I did my job. I did whatever was asked and went home. Never thought about this stuff. So I was like, I don't really know anybody that can answer these questions. And I reached out to this guy who I'd been watching online. His name was Kevin Shipp. And for those of you who don't know who Kevin Shipp is, he's a CIA whistleblower. He worked in counterintelligence, and he served in many companies in his tenure at the CIA.
This is The Big Picture, an official television report to the nation from the United States Army.
was an OSS memo, the precursor of the CIA, where they were doing a study of the use of motion pictures in America as a means of psychological warfare. So it goes all the way back to pre-1947, when U.S. intelligence was using motion pictures to alter the thinking of Americans in the United States.
The morale of our troops is high. The laughter, music, and general entertainment which comes out of a single small package like this one have helped to build that morale.
The CIA is funneling information into Hollywood. Hollywood is putting out in the movies, and the population believes it.
Taxes to bury the Axis.
This document right here is a FOIA document. Anybody in America, anybody can request this. It's Freedom of Information Act. And in the 40s, they were telling you they controlled the radio stations. They controlled most of the mainstream media. They're telling you right here that motion pictures are used as psychological warfare. Why would they stop doing it?
And no time has the CIA engaged in any political activity or any intelligence activity that was not approved at the highest level.
Alan Dulles groomed and recruited Ian Fleming, and Dulles and the CIA actually helped Fleming write his books and paint the CIA in a favorable light. And they also, Dulles helped produce Thunderball to make the CIA and agents look like honorable, cool people. The CIA actually helped him write the books and write the script for that movie. And then the president of MPAA was actually providing intelligence to the CIA as an operative in that position in Hollywood.
Mr. Fleming, in your books, there's a great amount of detail. Is this detail based on personal experience? Do you make it up? Where does it come from?
Well, I can say it's 90% from personal experience, really. Of course, if I started sticking too close to the true espionage work of today, I should be in trouble with the Official Secrets Act in England, even supposing I had access to information.
There's no question about the fact that Mockingbird is real. It started out paying journalists in major media, Pulitzer Prize winning journalists, to print fake stories that the CIA wanted in the press and fake interviews. And this was revealed in the Church Committee.
Do you have any people being paid by the CIA who are contributing to a major circulation American journal? We do have people who submit pieces to American journals.
And of course, then the CIA destroyed the rest of the files, which is what they do. George H.W. Bush came out and finally made the statement about Mockingbird. Well, we're going to officially stop the Mockingbird program. The CIA will no longer pay journalists to write stories. From now on, the program is voluntary, which means Mockingbird continues today. When's the last time you've seen a mainstream media outlet do a serious investigative report on the actions of the CIA? There's a reason for that.
This would mean that the CIA could manipulate the news in the United States by channeling it through some foreign country. And we're looking at that very carefully.
That continues today?
Well, I would think probably for a reporter it would continue today, but because of all of the revelations of the period of the 1970s, it seems to me that a reporter's got to be much more circumspect in doing it now, or he runs the risk of at least being looked at with considerable disfavor by the public. I think you've got to be much more careful about it.
Platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is Dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely 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 dangerous to our democracy.
There is something about the way the CIA has been functioning that is casting a shadow on our historic position of freedom, and I feel we need to correct it.
Senator Moynihan proposed a bill to dismantle the CIA.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Introduced it twice. The second time was 1995. Ironically, 1 year later in 1996, the CIA established the Entertainment Liaison Office, which was specifically penetrated into Hollywood, and Chase Brandon was actually co-wrote scripts. For example, The Recruit.
You're looking for high horsepower, high energy, very competitive people who are driven by patriotism and a sense of wanting to serve a greater cause.
I am recruiting you. Would I have to kill anyone? Would you like to?
So the CIA was and is in Hollywood, was and is contributing to Hollywood productions and that manipulation.
The Recruit. Nothing is what it seems.
As I started to wake up, I never actually considered that the CIA had an office in Hollywood. And I'm like, well, I see this, I see that. And I started putting feelers out, like, does anybody else see this stuff? And not many people were awake. But the one person that I reached out to was an old colleague of mine, a friend of mine named Brad Martin. And Brad and I had similar careers. We worked our way up through the business together. And I'm like, hey, Brad, you've seen this, you've seen that? And he's like, yeah, for sure. And so that gave me strength. That gave me like, okay, well, I'm not alone in this deal. And I'm going to keep looking.
Let me just say this. Brad's one of the greatest stuntmen I've ever met. Probably the best.
I'm a very thickly creative person. I've been doing action for movies for 26, 27 years. I excelled at the action aspect of it, at the physical aspects of doing the fights and doing the gymnastics and doing the falls and doing the driving. I trained really hard. I became one of the top stuntmen in the business. I started becoming a fight coordinator, and then a stunt coordinator, and then an action director. Very few people have ever gotten to where I've gotten to, and I'm super proud of what I did. I mean, I had a very idealistic view of the movie business, and I've been disillusioned a few times. It feels very much like there's an agenda in every movie. I realized that it was more of a machine, and it was more of they just needed content to put out there for the masses. I stopped really watching TV. I stopped really watching movies. One of the reasons why I stopped watching movies is I got into my research and what's going on in the world right now, and all the corruptness and all of the plot twists of reality. And I started realizing that reality is 20 times more interesting than Hollywood. I mean, I was a Hollywood buff. I loved all of those movies, but now they're meaningless, because I know what's going on right now actually has purpose and has a meaning, and there are consequences. And once this story is told on what's happening in the world right now, and all of the powers that be battling each other, it will be the greatest story ever told. Like, for instance, I saw something on History Channel talking about how the CIA helped Disney buy all the swampland in Florida. Well, why on earth would they do that?
His lawyers in charge of purchasing the parcels had served in military intelligence during World War II and knew how to keep a secret. And they used several different companies, none with Disney's name, to acquire the properties.
Now I go down this rabbit hole of what does the CIA have to do with Hollywood, or at least with Disney? Washington, D.C. is definitely in Hollywood. I have seen documents of the DOD and the CIA writing to the studio heads, guiding them in certain fashion. There's a lot of things that people talk about that are conspiracy theory, but there's some things that ring true with me. It's like, oh, wow, that makes a lot of sense.
Another program developed by the CIA after World War II was called Operation Paperclip. It's been depicted in many movies, including Disney's Marvel series.
This Operation Paperclip after World War II, SHIELD recruited German scientists with strategic value.
Thought I could help their cause.
Operation Paperclip, and this is something people need to know because it has been so covered up and mocked and berated and claimed to be a conspiracy theory. And by the way, the term labeling people as conspiracy theorists was invented by the CIA to deflect any attention over the JFK assassination. They invented that word as a way to shut down scrutiny or this critical investigation of voting. So they started that whole ball rolling. In terms of Operation Paperclip, it is documented. There's absolutely no question about it. Alan Dulles, CIA director, was associate of Heinrich Himmler of the Third Reich. So what Dulles proceeded to do when the Third Reich was brought down was he secretly brought all of the top Nazi scientists into the U.S. He falsified their files that he gave to Harry Truman, making them look like there were no war crimes. They brought these Nazi scientists into the CIA to work for the CIA, and that includes the human experiments they conducted on Jewish men, women, and children, and the psychological studies that these Nazi scientists had done. The CIA was using their expertise for these programs through Operation Paperclip, and this was Nazi, much of it occult beliefs that the CIA adopted and actually put these people on their payroll.
One of the programs that came out of Operation Paperclip was MKUltra. Now, MKUltra was a very complex program that dealt with human experiments and mind manipulation.
As this 1952 CIA memo says, the aim is controlling an individual to the point where he will do our bidding against his will, and even against such fundamental laws of nature as self-preservation.
In the Church Committee, MKUltra came out as an actual program of mind control using mental, physical, and sexual abuse and psychotropic drugs.
Lysergic acid diethylamide, LSD.
It was one of the first times that anybody had run into a powerful drug that was different than anything else that they knew about.
A decision was made at the highest levels of the CIA to do testing on unwitting Americans.
At Ravenscraig, Dr. Cameron went further with drugs and electric shock treatments than any researchers in the MKUltra project dared. His aim was to wipe the mind clean. Then he would implant new messages by forcing the patient to listen to a hypnotic repetition as many as 250,000 times. This was called psychic driving.
He would give the patient intensive electric treatment. He would attempt to implant new ideas in the mind of the patient.
Now, to a layman, it would appear that Dr. Cameron was trying to take the slate and wipe it clean, the slate being the mind. In other words, brainwashing.
Okay, that's a very good comparison.
Brainwashing.
Yes, to that.
No. Good heavens.
You're doing fine. Just try to describe it. Oh, you don't know. You want to give yourself. You want to give yourself surgery.
How do you feel inside? Inside? I don't have any inside.
Nobody explained it to me. Nobody ever asked me if I was willing to do it or anything.
They put me on sleep treatment. And they kept you asleep for 23 days. And while I was asleep, they were shocking the heck out of me with electric shocks and playing tapes.
Why are you initiating responsibility? Why are you?
It was really like a concentration camp.
What I told Peter is,
You mind if I look this way? You look that way. Nothing for you to watch here, but you're going to talk to me as we go along.
They couldn't go any further because CIA Director Richard Helms destroyed all the CIA's MK Ultra documents, and they had to rely on witnesses. So they were never able to dig even deeper. What they got was enough. It was never terminated. There's no evidence that it was ever terminated. No documents, no nothing, and not even an admission by the CIA that it's been terminated.
How do you feel?
I'm feeling better, thank you.
Feeling better? Are you sleeping well?
Yes, I'm sleeping better now.
We could disable a whole city by putting a very small amount on a water supply. After all of these years of us, those of us who were looking for this secret drug, this was the only began to look for the first time like it might be something like that.
So MK Ultra was one of the hardest programs for me to wrap my head around because it's a lot of subset programs. And I was really surprised that Brad Martin knew about MK Ultra.
People think that research people are crazy for talking about MK Ultra, mind control. Even if they acknowledge that existed, they go, oh, well, that ended in the 70s. That's a crock of shit.
And perhaps the world's only hope of stopping a sinister assassination plot.
The movie that I did involving that topic was Zoolander.
The fashion industry has been behind every major political assassination over the last 200 years.
I mean, at the time, I was making a comedy and I had no idea what I was involved with. But now looking back on the movie, I'm blown away at just the propaganda.
Doesn't anyone notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills!
In a movie like Zoolander, when they're showing you that they're controlling Derek Zoolander's mind through mind control, you realize that they're trying to desensitize you and to make you think that what you're watching is fiction because it's in a comedy.
Like a mass MK Ultra now. Their purpose is to capture the minds of the people and feed them false history. The CIA is funneling information into Hollywood. Hollywood is putting out in the movies, and the population believes it.
All right, so look, here's the deal. They have been desensitizing us since we were born, and I'll give you some examples. Let's start with the big one. Let's start with words we hear all the time and never even think about. Let's start with the word entertainment. Entertain. What does that mean? To bind or hold. To bind or hold what? An audience's attention. Okay, now let's take the word Hollywood. Where does that come from? Well, Hollywood comes from the holly tree. And the ancient Druids, back in the day, used to take the holly tree, make wands to weave spells, cast spells, or channel spells. And when they needed help, they would consult the magi's or the mediums of the day to help channel their spells to the population. We'll cut to today. What do we have in our houses? We have these black boxes. What are they called? TVs. But if you stop and you say the word television, and when you turn on that television, what do you get? What's the first thing that pops up? A list of channels. And when you turn on those channels, what's on those channels? Programming. They are programming you. They've been programming your whole life. You don't even know it. They do it with your music. They do it with your TV. They do it with your movies. They do it with your games. They have been programming us and programming you since you were little, and you don't even know it because you don't even question it.
Starting in 1900, we entered a previously unimaginable time of modern technology. Advances that allowed the rulers of this world to construct and direct our stories in ways we previously never imagined. As a result, new techniques to control the population were realized. These are the people from the companies that we have trusted to deliver us our news and tell our stories. This has always been about controlling what we as the population think and hear. They help create our culture and influence our society. We as citizens only trust them because as a society, we think that the gatekeepers have our best interest in mind.
The dangerous, edges here are that he's trying to undermine the media, trying to make up his own facts, And it could be that while unemployment and the economy worsens, he could have undermined the messaging so much that he can actually control exactly what people think. And that is our job. That is our job. That is our job. Our job.
As I was researching, I found that most of the early communication companies were developed for shipping or aviation. And a lot of the men that started these companies were commissioned by the military during World War I and World War II. Many of these men worked for the Army and Navy intelligence services, along with the OSS, which we know became the CIA. There were many examples of these men becoming the heads or founders of some of the biggest motion picture and media companies before and after their government or military service. I wanted to know how many of the media companies in today's world connected back to Washington. So I started looking. It was like a family tree. The connections between our government personnel and the media corporations was unbelievable. Google, Amazon, Netflix, Twitter, CNN, ABC. So what would happen if all these companies had the same political ideology or agenda? We as this population like to hear people confirm our confirmation biases. We like to hear people tell us that we're right. We don't like to be wrong. And we believe that the people on the media and the people that we're listening to have our best interests in mind. The problem is what if they don't? So if you stop and think about it, they can place any agenda on the population that they choose.
I think that Hollywood is teaching bad morals to the youth of this country as well as adults. Desensitizing of violence to the masses. You can't deny that. My kids have seen so many people get killed in very violent ways.
3 times as much gun violence now.
And the sex that's in PG-13 movies.
Why?
Every Disney movie, there's a major character, usually a parent, that gets killed. Trauma to the child. Why? It's so horrible. What a bad story. Why do you need to start a story with a parent dying? Always. It's so sad.
Under MK Ultra, they experimented on children. We were even taught this in psychophysiology program that if you get to a child between ages 1 and 6 or 1 or 8, especially with sexual abuse or sexual trauma, you will split their personality and they will be imprinted the rest of their life. And many times that results in split personalities and dissociative behavior and other things.
These occult topics are being introduced to our kids, and most parents aren't even aware of it. So the biggest surge with this occult type material took place in the late 60s and the early 70s with movies like The Exorcist, Amityville Horror, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Halloween, and Roman Polanski's Rosemary's Baby. And coincidentally, this same time period, it parallels the rise of the Church of Satan in Los Angeles, and it was founded by a guy named Anton LaVey.
So it is done.
When I was a police officer, we had cases of satanic cults right in Arlington, Virginia. Those have been around for decades. They're in the high schools, they're in the colleges, they're government, and they're in Hollywood.
I got to meet people like Sammy Davis and that kind of shit. Sammy told me he worshiped the devil. Sammy was like, you know, Satan is as powerful as God. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? He says, why do you think there's so much anger in the world and killing and Satan? And he saw my reaction to it, and he kind of lightened up on it. And he was like, the antenna is dark, and it's the candles on the table, and Sammy's face over the candle. You know, Satan is as powerful as God.
From our point of view, it really makes no difference whether you pray to a father god or to a mother goddess or to an entire gaggle of gods and goddesses.
Michael Aquino was a high-level officer in the National Security Agency. He was and is, you'll see him today, a practicing Satanist. He created the Satanic Temple of Set, which he still runs. He was a high-level NSA officer. He's a member of the association. I used to be in the Association of Former Intelligence Officers, AFIO. He's a member of that. He's plugged in big time to the intelligence community. And he wrote a paper called Mind War. And Mind War was about psychological operations against populations, including the domestic population, using Satanist techniques and tools.
Aquino was first involved in MK-Ultra operations during the Vietnam War as part of the Phoenix program.
Well, first, I've been involved in intelligence and psychological operations for about 40 years in all levels of it and across the intelligence community.
You are a lieutenant colonel in the United States Army.
Correct.
Now, and how does the Army feel about you being head of the Temple of Set?
The Army has known about my religion for the entire span of my Army career, which began in 1968. The Army has paid little attention to it, the same as it would to anybody who was, say, a follower of Hinduism or of Buddhism or any other slightly unusual religion today.
He was occupied a position at the Presidio, which was a training facility for the U.S. government, and it was uncovered that he was running a pedophile ring. I think 50 kids came out and fingered him as the guy that had done sexual acts on them as children. It went to trial. He walked from the trial successfully because he had a good attorney, despite the fact that there were multiple witnesses that said Aquino, through satanic rituals, had abused them as children. There's no question that he's a practicing Satanist. Just watch any one of his interviews.
On this altar is one of a number of daggers, which we may use in our rituals. This one happened to belong to the commanding general of the most elite unit of Germany's infamous SS, which was concerned with black magic and occultism research in general. Anything that it could find that had to do with the origins of the human race, destiny of humanity.
The perverted view of the occult held by Heinrich Himmler was of an evil magic that could help create a new master race. Wewelsburg Castle is where he performed his ceremonies.
I have been to the Wewelsburg, which still preserves Heinrich Himmler's ritual chambers to this day, and have conducted a black magical ritual in the so-called Hall of the Dead beneath the Wewelsburg. The dagger is inscribed to our comrade and Leibstandarte Theodor Wisch, Brigadeführer, a Major General in the Waffen-SS. And on its blade, it bears the inscription, Mein Ehre heißt Treu, or my honor shall be known by my faithfulness.
Aquino's thesis stated that enemy populations could be subdued by inflicting a state of psychological terror and feelings of imminent destruction. He discusses the use of psychotronic weapons and electromagnetic weapons that influence the mind. By extremely low-frequency signals, piggybacked on broadcasted radio, TV, or microwave communications in order to influence and manipulate the thoughts and feelings of the target population. These ongoing MK-Ultra operations are functioning as a counterinsurgency and infiltration operation aimed at destabilizing the United States and other industrialized nations.
I give the CIA a total credit for sponsoring and initiating the entire consciousness movement, counterculture events of the 1960s.
History will judge the role of the CIA and other intelligence agencies in unwittingly contributing to the counterculture of the 60s through their intense interest in LSD and other hallucinogenics. But for the moment, at least, the argument can be made that the CIA helped usher in the age of Aquarius.
Laurel Canyon was the epitome of the summer of love. I mean, we saw the possibility of a way we could live.
It's odd because in Laurel Canyon, so many of the soon-to-be stars there, their parents were in either the military-industrial complex or intelligence or the Pentagon. In Frank Zappa's case, his dad was working at Edgewood Arsenal, where they were doing biochem studies, psychotropic, and exposing U.S. troops to VX nerve gas and other things. The family kept gas masks in their house. He grew up with that in case there was an accident. And Edgewood Arsenal was doing very similar related MK-Ultra projects on U.S. troops. The Gulf of Tonkin is another prime example. The commander of the Gulf Fleet in the Gulf of Tonkin, his son was Jim Morrison. They claimed the USS Maddox was attacked by Vietnamese vessels. It was never attacked. As a matter of fact, they put ghost ships on the radar to make it look like they were Vietnamese ships. The Maddox was never attacked. It was an actual, literal false flag to enable the U.S. to declare war on Vietnam. So Jim Morrison's dad was involved in the false flag of the Gulf of Tonkin.
After talking to Kevin, I started looking into Laurel Canyon. I drove down Laurel Canyon to Hollywood almost daily when I first moved out there. And I never knew that there was an old Air Force base called Lookout Mountain U.S. Air Force Base at the top of Laurel Canyon. And what's funny is, if you do the history of it, it's owned today by a guy named Jared Leto.
Another tactic developed out of the MK Ultra project was the use of compromise and control via honeypots.
The decision was made to do testing on unwitting victims. It was decided they should be on the fringes of society because they were most vulnerable.
We did quite a study of prostitutes and their behavior. How do you take a woman who is willing to use her body to get money out of a guy to get him to talk about things which are much more important, like state secrets? We learned a lot about human nature in the bedroom. We started to pick up knowledge that could be used in operations.
There would be victims in all of this. As one agency memo says, we have no answer to the moral question.
That's one of the CIA's favorite tactic, are honeypots. And I work with CIA psychologists, and they're dirty.
I always felt that every house should have its own secret panel.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I see. You lift this up.
Mm-hmm. This is a trap door. Opens up and looks into the cave, or what time is called the Wu Grotto.
Boy.
They're running blackmail operations where they're getting very well-known government and private industry elite people in compromising positions at the Playboy Mansion, on Epstein's plane, on Orgy Island, and they're photographing them. And after that, it's like Congressman so-and-so or CEO so-and-so. I wouldn't bring that up if I was you, because we got photographs of you with a 14-year-old girl on Epstein's plane, for example. And you talk about shutting somebody up permanently, that's how they do it.
What happens in the grotto stays in the grotto.
Okay.
Look, it's pretty simple if you think about it. To control the population, you have to control the people messaging the population. Some of these stars have 20, 30 million followers. That's more followers than CNN, Fox, ABC, NBC. These people have to be controlled. They can't just go off a message and start saying whatever they want to say. They have to be somewhat reined in. They have to be controlled, or they do not get the platform to have the voice that they have.
Forget the politicians. The politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't. You have no choice. You have owners. They own you. They own everything. They own all the important land. They own and control the corporations. They've long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, the city halls. They got the judges in their back pockets, and they own all the big media companies, so they control just about all of the news and information you get to hear. They got you by the balls. It's a big club, and you ain't in it. You and I are not in the big club. By the way, it's the same big club they use to beat you over the head with all day long, when they tell you what to believe. All day long, beating you over the head in their media, telling you what to believe, what to think, and what to buy. The table is tilted, folks. The game is rigged, and nobody seems to notice. Nobody seems to care. Good, honest, hardworking people, white collar, blue collar, doesn't matter what color shirt you have on. Good, honest, hardworking people continue. These are people of modest means. Continue to elect these rich cocksuckers who don't give a fuck about them. They don't care about you at all, at all, at all. Yeah. You know? And nobody seems to notice. Nobody seems to care. That's what the owners count on, the fact that Americans will probably remain willfully ignorant, because the owners of this country know the truth. It's called the American dream, because you have to be asleep to believe it.
If you stop for a second and you just look at the bigger picture, and you check out for a minute and you kind of compare the ancient times to today, well, back then they had like what, demigods and gods. They were like Achilles, Hercules, Apollo, Mercury. All these were demigods. And that's who the people in those days looked up to. Well, today we have all these people like Jay-Z, Rihanna, Beyonce, Lady Gaga, Katy Perry. In film, we have Brad Pitt, Will Smith. We have all these big stars.